Hello everyone, welcome back to the second episode of our Networking Homelab series, and in this video we are going to be doing a basic switch configuration. So for the objectives of this video, we are going to simulate a console connection to a switch using packet tracer, just like how we do it in real-world practice when we are configuring an actual switch. We are also going to configure the basic initial settings when you are setting up a switch, just like hostname, IP address, passwords, and setting up SSH so you can remote into the switch. And of course, we are gonna practice our show commands to verify all of our configuration. And I'm also gonna be explaining what every command does and why we use all of the commands. So for the prerequisites for this Homelab, for you to be able to follow along, you need to have Packet Tracer installed already. I'm not going to show you how to install Packet Tracer in this video. I do have another video where I show how to install Packet Tracer, so if you don't have it yet, please watch that first. Also, if you want to follow along this video, I prepared a PDF file with all of the commands and instruction that can be found on the website at eastcharmer.com, and it's under the networking folder, and it is called the Basic Switch Configuration Homelab, where you can see all the instructions, step-by-step instructions, and all the commands that we're going to use in this video today. I'm also going to provide a link down in the description box below if you are interested in this. So if you're interested in this topic and you want to learn more about this Homelab setup, please keep on watching, and without further ado, let's get started. So in this Homelab, we are going to be setting up a switch from scratch. For example, you are adding a new switch to your network, or you're replacing and upgrading to a new switch. This is how you will set it up initially, just like how we do it in real world. So for example, you have a new switch in here out of the box. You just unbox it and you're gonna configure it. So what we're gonna do is get into the switch by connecting it with a console cable, just like this blue cable here. So I'm gonna use this to connect the switch to a computer and access the switch through the terminal, and that's where we are gonna enter our commands to configure the switch. Okay, so let's launch Packet Tracer here and add the following devices to your workspace. So go to the bottom right corner of Packet Tracer and let's add the networking devices here for a switch. Let's do one 2960 switch in here and go to the end devices, and let's add one PC in here, and then let's connect this together. And as you remember, we have a console cable that we connected in the real world example. So let's go to the cables or connections in here, and you can see a blue cable that is the same as what we use in real world. So let's grab that or click that and connect it to our PC, and let's select this RS232, which is the console port, and let's connect it to our switch and just select console. So now we can access our switch through the terminal. So let's click on the PC in here and click on the desktop tab and click on terminal, and just leave all the settings here and click on OK. And as you can see, we are now inside our switch. So if you press on enter, it should take you to the user exec mode in here. Okay, so before we configure our switch, let's just check what our switch looks like. So we are gonna run a few show commands in here to check on our switch initially. So type in enable first so we can get to our privilege exec mode where we can run all of our commands. So let's start checking our running config first. Let's do a show run in here, and as you can see, we don't have anything configured yet. All of our interfaces are blank from configuration, so that's what it's supposed to look like. Next, let's run a show startup so we can see our startup config. So it's gonna say startup config is not present because we haven't configured anything yet. That's normal for our new switch. Next, let's do a show version. This is to show us what version iOS we have for our switch, and also other information, but we just usually care about the version number for our switch, so we can see it on the very top. We have version 15 for now for this switch. Okay, next, let's do a show VLAN and see what it will look like. For now, it doesn't have anything yet, but the default VLAN, which is VLAN 1. So that's what our switch looks like for now. And now let's move on to configuring the basic network device settings for our switch. Okay, so first we are gonna type in configure terminal or conft so we can go to our global exec mode and execute our commands in here. So let's start it with our switch hostname. Let's just type in hostname space the name of your switch. We are just going to use switch 01 for this Homelab example. And as you can see, the switch name has changed from switch to switch 01. Next is configuring password encryption in here by typing this command, service password encryption. You can just press on the tab and it will autocomplete for you. Okay, so we use this command to use encrypted password that is stored in our configuration file, because by default, the password that's set on Cisco switches are stored in plain text in configuration. So this adds to the layer of protection when we are setting up passwords, so they are encrypted, and to prevent anyone from easily reading the passwords when viewing the configuration file. Okay, next is we are gonna assign a secret password for the privilege exec mode. Okay, so let's do this code enable secret and then just type in the password that you want to use. So we are just gonna use the password Homelab for this exercise in here. And what it does is this sets an encrypted password for accessing our privilege exec mode. So I'm going to show you right now what happens. So we're just going to exit on this mode and exit again. So for example, you're just accessing your switch and you're in the user exec mode right now. You wanted to go to the privilege mode. So we're going to type in enable. And as you can see, it's asking for a password now, unlike earlier when we haven't configured this yet. So this is going to be the Homelab password that we have set up earlier. So that command sets up a password for this privilege exec mode when you type in the enable command. Okay, so let's go back to our global config, conft and enter our next command, which is to prevent unwanted DNS lookups. So the next command is no IP domain lookup, and what it does is it disables DNS lookup to prevent the switch from wasting time trying to resolve incorrect commands into domain names. Okay, to explain this better, I will show you how this works. So for example, we haven't entered this command yet, and let's go back to our privilege exec mode and let's try to type in some incorrect commands, for example, some mistyped commands in here. What the switch does is it's trying to resolve the incorrect commands into domain names, and you can see it's gonna be translating this into something because we have tried to type an incorrect command, and this is a waste of time because it takes so long for the switch to finish this before you can even type in anything. So right now I can't type in anything until the switch finishes this. So we want to disable this DNS lookup to make our configuration easier, especially if we have typed like wrong commands, because that happens sometimes. Okay, so once it's done, it's gonna show this unknown command or computer name in here, and it just takes a while sometimes. So we want to disable the DNS lookup. So let's go back to conft and type in this command to disable it. No IP domain lookup, and then type in enter. And let's go back to type our commands. For example, some misspelled commands. At least it doesn't translate it anymore, and it will just let us know if it's incorrect command. So that's very helpful. Okay, so next is we're gonna configure the message of the day banner in here by typing this command banner motd #, and you have to enter the message that you want to display when the user accesses the switch. So I'm just going to simplify this and type in unauthorized access is strictly prohibited in here, and then just type in the # at the end of your message. to exit this. Okay, so this banner is useful because it's typically used to communicate important information such as legal disclaimers or security policies that you have for your company, or warnings for the users accessing the device. Okay, so next we are gonna do some console port access, because we are accessing our switch right now using console ports, and they should also be restricted for security purposes. So we are gonna type in this command line con 0, and this selects the line 0 of the console connection, and then it will take us to the line configuration in here, and we are gonna set up the password in here for the console. So it will ask us whenever we try to console into it. So let's just type in the command password and Homelab. For example, you can type any password that you want in here, and then type in login, and also we can add this command logging synchronous to prevent console messages from interrupting commands, just like how we did with the no IP domain lookup earlier. So that's how we set up password to make our console connection secure as well. So let's just test it now and try to connect again to our terminal in here. Okay, so now you can see the message of the day in here that we have typed in earlier, and that's the first message that you will see when you access the switch. And then now it's asking for a password. Earlier it didn't ask for it, but because we set it up for our console, it's asking for the password now. And let's just use the Homelab password that we typed earlier, and then let's type in enable to get to our privilege mode, and it's gonna ask for a password again. So this is just making our switch secure for our initial configuration. Okay, so our next command is configuring an IP address on VLAN 1. So VLAN 1 is the default VLAN on most switches, and when we assign an IP address to VLAN 1, it allows us to remotely manage the switch. So we don't have to connect to our console cable anymore once we have configured our remote connection to the switch and we have given it an IP address. Okay, before we configure it, let's do a show command first to see what our VLAN 1 looks like. So let's do a show IP interface brief command. This usually just shows us all of our interfaces, and VLAN 1 is there by default, and as you can see, it is administratively down for now, which means that we have to do the no shutdown command to make sure that the interface is activated. And this is also where we are going to assign the IP address. So right now there's no IP address assigned to it, so let's go ahead and do conf t so we can configure it. We can just type in the command int for interface, then VLAN space 1 to get us to the VLAN 1 interface, and let's just type in IP address command, and then whatever IP address that you want to set this up with. So for this Homelab example, we're just going to use a very simple IP address, 192.168.1.5 or any number that you want, and a subnet mask for this. Class C is 255.255.255.0, and enter. And then of course, let's not forget the no shut command to activate this. So as you can see, it has changed to up now. And let's do the show command again to see our interface now for VLAN 1. So let's show IP interface brief, and as you can see in here, VLAN 1 now has an IP address and its interface is up now. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to test that connection. So what we want to do first is to set an IP address to our computer in here by going to the IP configuration under the desktop tab, and then just set up an IP address on the same network as the switch. So let's do 192.168.1.3 for example, as long as they're on the same network. Okay, and then let's connect our switch to our PC using our straight through cable in here. So just connect it here. Okay, so let's test our IP address now here. We are connected now, and let's go to PC and go to our command prompt and just ping our switch IP address, which is 192.168.1.5, and it's gonna fail on the first try because it's just trying to connect. So right now you can ping it, so it means that it can be reached now. So that's good. We have set up our IP address for our remote access in here. Okay, so let's go back to our terminal and let us configure our default gateway now too. This is important for initial configuration. So just make sure that you're back to your global exec mode and type in IP default gateway, and the default gateway that you want to set it with, we can use 192.168.1.1 for our network. And the default gateway allows the switch to communicate with devices outside of its local network, enabling remote management from different subnets. Okay, so now for the fun part, let us enable remote management with SSH because we want a more secure connection in here. So here are the steps in enabling SSH for remote access. First step is to create a local user that we can use to log in through SSH. So the command is username space the username that you want. In this example, we are just going to use admin, but we can use different username in here. And then type in privilege 15. So this privilege 15 assigns the highest privilege level to the admin user. So in Cisco iOS, privilege levels range from 0 to 15, and 15 is the highest level or the full admin rights. Okay, so next to it, we are gonna type secret. Secret sets the password for the admin user to be encrypted, which is way more secure than just doing a password command in here. So we are gonna do a secret command and then space the password that you want to set for this. So let's just do Cisco 123 in this Homelab, for example. Okay, so the next step is very important too, is to create a domain name. So we are gonna do this command IP domain name, and then just any domain name that you can think of, even if it doesn't exist. It doesn't have to be a real domain. So I'm gonna use eastcharmer.com in here as my domain name. So what this does is we use this command to configure a domain name because it's required when setting up SSH. Because SSH is a secure protocol, it needs to generate encryption keys for secure communication, and it uses a combination of the device host name and domain name to create a unique key pair. That's why you have to provide a domain name even if it's not a real domain. So it can create a key for you to use later on when you do an SSH connection. Okay, so let's enter this command in here, and the next step would be to generate the keys for SSH. So we are going to be using this command crypto key generate RSA. So this is used to generate encryption keys on a switch or a router. Without generating keys, the SSH cannot be used on the device. So we have to set this up before enabling SSH. So once we have our key in here through our domain, we can now generate our keys, and then you can just enter this command, and then it's gonna ask you how many bits in the modulus. So this is asking you for the key size for your key length in here. So we typically type in a size that is more than 512 because the bigger the size, the more secure it is. So let's just do 1024 in here. You can do more if you want, but this is good enough. Okay, so now it's generating the keys, and as you can see, SSH1 has been enabled in here. Okay, so now we can enable our SSH for remote access because we have our keys now, and our first command that we can type is configuring our SSH to version 2. So we're gonna do IP SSH version 2 in here, SSH version 2 is more secure and more modern than version 1 with enhanced encryption. So that's what we're gonna use in here. Okay, so the next command that we're gonna do is line VTY 0 to 15. So this command will access the virtual terminal lines 0 through 15, and these lines handle the remote connections like SSH or Telnet. We use this command so that the switch will accept remote connections on these virtual lines. So after this, we are gonna do this command, transport input, and this command will tell the switch to allow connections on the VTY lines, and there are different connections that you can use for this. So if we type in the question mark in here, so you can see there are different connections available that you can choose from, and in this case we are just gonna use SSH in here because it's more secure. So let's type in SSH. Okay, so now our switch will allow only SSH connections. And the last command that we are gonna use in here is login local command, and this is gonna tell the switch to use the local authentication that we have set up earlier, like this username, admin, and the password in here. So the users will need to enter the credential when they log in through SSH by using this command login local. Okay, so for the moment of truth, let's try to SSH to our switch now and see if it works, because right now we are still consoled into the switch by using this terminal. Now let's go to our command prompt and let's try to connect via SSH. We have to enter this command SSH-L, which stands for login, and the username that we use to set up in here for the SSH, and we use admin in this Homelab example, and the IP address of our switch. So we use the 192.168.1.5 IP address, and when you type in enter, it should ask you the password. So go ahead and type in the password for this. We use Cisco 123, and as you can see in here, we can now access our switch. We can see our message of the day in here, and we should be able to do our regular configuration. So that means that our SSH connection was successful. Okay, so another way to test SSH on Packet Tracer is to go to your desktop tab and scroll down to Telnet SSH client in here, and then make sure that SSH is selected in here. And so let's type in the IP address of the switch, which is 192.168.1.5, and then username is admin, and let's connect in here, and it should ask for the password Cisco 123, and as you can see, you can also get to the switch through this method. Okay, so that will be it for our Homelab in this video. That is the basic configuration for the initial setup for a switch, and we're able to do SSH connection to it and initially configure it by console connection. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I hope you can try this Homelab, and I hope that you have learned something in this video. And we are going to continue this series, and we're going to do more switch configuration and examples that also simulates the real world experience in our Homelab. So please stay tuned for more episodes in this series, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.